Hi again, everybody. Okay, so we had already talked about how phrases and clauses are the building blocks of sentences. And we discussed phrases and said that a phrase is two or more related words that contains either a subject or a verb, but not both. Well, a clause is a group of related words that contain both a subject and a verb. Now, clauses can be categorized as either independent or dependent. So let's take a look at what an independent clause is. An independent clause is a clause that can stand alone and make sense. So let's take a look at our example. We have I ate. In this group of words, we have I, which is our subject, and ate, which is our verb. Therefore, it's considered to be a clause. But it's also considered to be a complete thought that can stand by itself. If you look here, we have a period indicating that it's a sentence. Therefore, we know that independent clauses can also be sentences or complete thoughts. We also have dependent clauses. And dependent clauses are clauses that can't stand alone and make sense. So if you take a look at our example, we have after I ate. We have three related words here, and we have a subject I and a verb ate. But if we took this by itself, it wouldn't make sense. It needs more information for it to be able to stand on its own and make sense. Therefore, because it can't stand alone and make sense, it's considered to be a dependent clause. Now, we can further subdivide clauses or categorize clauses in four different ways. Or there are four other types of clauses, basically. We have adjectival or relative clauses, adverbial clauses, noun clauses, and elliptical clauses. Let's take a look at adjectival or relative clauses. These are basically clauses that describe a noun. As you can see from the word adjectival, comes from the word adjective or is related to the word adjective, and adjectives, as we know, describe nouns. So these kinds of clauses begin with either a relative pronoun, like which, what, who, etc., or a relative adverb, like when, where, before, etc. Let's take a look at a few examples we have here. This is the student who loves fried grasshoppers. In this example, we have the clause who loves. Who is acting as our subject, and loves is acting as our verb, and together they describe the student. In the next example, we have this is the temple where I met the monk. Where is acting as our subject, and met is acting as the verb. And altogether, this clause is describing the temple. Which temple did you meet the monk? Which temple is this? This is the temple where I met the monk. Okay. Now, the next type of clause we're going to talk about is an adverbial clause. And the adverbial clause acts as, I'm sure you can tell from the name of it, as an adverb. An adverbial clause begins with a subordinating conjunction like before, since, after, because, when, or if. And some examples that I have here are the following. Since I was so hungry, I couldn't eat a thing. Since I was so hungry is our clause. We have the subject I and was acting as the verb. And it's acting, the whole clause itself is acting to describe or modify the verb eat. Therefore, it's acting as an adverb because it's modifying the verb eat. In the next example, we have after I ran that mile, I was exhausted. After I ran that mile is our clause. We have I as our subject and ran as our verb. And this clause is actually answering the question of when you were exhausted. And if you'll remember from our module on adverbs, we talked about how adverbs answer certain questions like where and when. Now the next type of clause that we're going to talk about, we only have two more, so don't worry, are noun clauses. And noun clauses function as nouns, right? Okay, so noun clauses usually begin with a relative pronoun or with the words how, when, why, if, or whether. So let's take a look at our two examples. We have whether you like it or not, you'll eat it. This clause is actually acting as the whole subject of our sentence and functioning as a noun. In the next example, we have whoever is the quietest gets to line up first. Whoever is functioning as the subject of the clause, and is the verb, and together this clause is acting as a noun or the subject of our sentence. Therefore, it's considered to be a noun clause. The last type of clause we're going to talk about is fairly simple. It's called an elliptical clause, and it's basically a clause that's missing a word or a few words, but the meaning is still understood. So the example that I have here is, although only 2, my friend's son can read. Now, you'll notice that although only 2, well, we are missing a few words. We're missing the subject and the verb. We're actually missing the words he is. But you can still gather and understand the meaning of the clause without those 2 words. Therefore, it's considered to be an elliptical clause. Now, I hope that this clarifies clauses for you and all the different types that we have.